Welcome to Recap King. In this video, we will explain Antboy. This movie tells the story of a 12-year-old boy who is bitten by an ant and develops superpowers. When a supervillain enters the scene, he must step up to the challenge. Will he be able to be a true superhero? Let's find out in Antboy. Antboy tells the story of a 12-year-old boy named Pelle. Pelle is a child who tends to be quiet and does not have many friends. Pelle always thought of himself as a little ant in an anthill. No one ever really cared about him. Even so, Pelle secretly has a crush on his classmate named Amanda Sommerstead. Amanda, who is the most popular student in school, may never notice Pelle's presence in class. One day when he came home from school, Pelle, who was eating an apple, overheard a commotion behind the school. He sneaked up to see what was going on. There, he saw two big boys bullying one of the students at his school. Without thinking, he threw the apple he was eating at the two boys. However, he was caught and a chase took place between him and the two boys. Pelle finally managed to avoid the pursuit of the bullies after hiding behind the bushes. Unbeknownst to him, a small ant bit his leg while he was hiding behind a bush. He felt a little itchy and then scratched it. When the pursuers had left, he came out of his hiding place, which turned out to be the yard of an old house. Pelle, who was observing the house, suddenly tapped his neck because he felt something biting his neck. It turned out that the one that bit his neck was an ant that also bit his leg. The ant looked like an ant in general. However, after being bitten by the ant in the neck, he felt extraordinary dizziness, as if the earth he was on was spinning at his feet. Soon he fell to the ground. Pelle saw someone approaching him, but because his vision was still dim, he could not see clearly, until finally he fainted. Pelle woke up when it was getting dark, and he immediately rushed home. Arriving at home, he was asked by his mother for coming home late. He then made up a story and told his mother that he went to a friend's house to study and play after school. His mother didn't seem to doubt his words and then told him to have dinner. However, Pelle, who felt his body was exhausted, chose to go straight to sleep. But while sleeping, he had nightmares about thousands of ants swarming. He opened his eyes again and felt that something bad was going to happen. The following day, Pelle woke up with a mouth covered in chocolate. Not only that, he was also surprised by the remnants of food and sweet snacks scattered on the floor of his room. His strangeness continued when he was enjoying breakfast with his parents. All of a sudden, his fingers clung so tightly to the milk box that he had to ask his father for help to get it off. It didn't stop there. He even broke a glass when he intended to lift the glass. But his parents didn't suspect anything and asked him to continue going to school as usual. While attending sports lessons at school, the petite Pelle was actually able to knock down his teacher while doing agility and balance exercises. Suddenly, he felt guilty for his teacher and was even more confused by the strange things that had happened to him since this morning. After school, one of Pelle's school friends, named Wilhelm, approached him. Wilhelm thanked him for helping him when he was bullied by two boys the day before. Wilhelm, who saw Pelle's action that knocked down their teacher during gym class, looked excited and asked him about the superpowers that he might have. Wilhelm said that he would keep it a secret if he was a superhero. Wilhelm then gave his favorite superhero comic to Pelle, but Pelle said that he was not a superhero as Wilhelm imagined. Their footsteps came to a halt when Pelle looked across the street and met a man who was staring at him intently. After that, he rushed back to his house. That evening, the man Pelle had seen earlier was at his house and reading a newspaper that carried news about Amanda's father. Mr. Sommerstead is a director of a well-known biochemical company called Farms. Then the scene switches to showing Wilhelm reading his favorite superhero comic while at school the next day. Not long after, Pelle came to see him and said that he had been bitten by an ant and told of the strange things he experienced after the incident. Pelle, who was confused by his strength, then asked his schoolmate for help. Wilhelm, who is a big fan of all superhero things, seemed very excited and immediately agreed to help him. Wilhelm then took Pelle to his house. Together, they then find out about the superpowers that a person might have after being bitten by an ant and conduct several experiments to test the superpowers that Pelle might possess. After that, they began to design superhero costumes that Pelle would wear in his action against crime. When everything was complete, Wilhelm and Pelle then headed to the parking lot where crime often occurred. While waiting, they then discussed a suitable alias for Pelle and agreed to use the name Antboy. Since they were already hungry, Wilhelm took the initiative to buy some food while Pelle waited in the parking lot. Shortly after Wilhelm left, Pelle heard a woman's screams asking for help because her bag was snatched away. Pelle immediately changed into an Antboy costume and rushed after the robber. When Pelle tried to stop him, the robber actually laughed at Pelle, who he thought was pretending to be a hero in a strange costume. The robber then intimidated him, who he thought was just an ordinary kid. Pelle then looks scared because it's the first time he's faced a real criminal. He stepped back as the robber drew closer to him. However, something strange happened when he suddenly crawled on the wall like an ant. Suddenly the robber was shocked and realized that Pelle was no ordinary boy. The robber then tried to escape, but Pelle caught him. Wilhelm, who had just returned to the parking lot after buying food, looked surprised that there were already many police cars there. Pelle then tells about the robbery that he managed to thwart and shows Wilhelm his ability to crawl on walls. However, when he intended to show his super skills to Wilhelm, he failed and fell. After arresting a criminal, they finally go home. Arriving at the house, Pelle was still wondering why he could no longer crawl on the wall. Wilhelm assumed that he might be running out of steam. Because sugar is a source of energy for ants, Wilhelm suggested to him to consume sweet foods. Wilhelm then made a few modifications to Pelle's costume with a belt that could store a supply of chocolate. Pelle wouldn't run out of energy and a sophisticated glove that could be connected to a cell phone. Long story short, Antboy has become a phenomenal figure and is famous for his actions against crime and helping people. People began to ask questions about Antboy. In a short time, Antboy became an idol for children and teenagers because the superhero also often helps students at school who are bullied. Pelle also felt pleased because he finally became famous and noticed by everyone thanks to his superpowers. One day, Wilhelm tried to warn Pelle not to get carried away with popularity because a true superhero saves people with noble intentions, not because everyone wants to be famous and admired. But Pelle did not heed the advice of his friend. The scene then switches to showing Amanda, who is in her room. Amanda apparently also idolizes the superhero Antboy because she looks happy when she decorates posters with Antboy stickers. However, the joy on her face faded when she heard a noise from the room next door. The loud music came from Ida's room, her sister who was also in her class. Ida and Amanda have opposite personalities. Amanda is a gentle and elegant girl, while Ida is always outspoken and tends to be indifferent to her appearance. When Ida returned to her room, Amanda saw the reflection of a man standing at the window in the mirror in front of her. When she turned to look at the man, she was suddenly startled and screamed. Hearing her sister's screams, Ida rushed into Amanda's room. But Ida was late because Amanda had been taken away by someone who had flown through the window. The next day, while at school, Pelle looked sad because Amanda didn't go to school. Not long after, the students gathered on one side of the school building because a student was hanging from a gutter on the school roof. Antboy rushed to help the student, but it turns out, the one hanging earlier was not a human, but a doll that Ida had deliberately placed so that she could meet Antboy personally. After meeting with Antboy, Ida immediately asked for his help and showed him a video recording of Amanda being confined in a glass box. Ida said that Amanda had been kidnapped and the kidnapper sent the videotape to their father. The kidnapper, who goes by the name the Flea, demanded a ransom of $20 million for Amanda. Somerstead and asked her father to step down from the position of director of the company b0y Farms. Ida begs Antboy to save her sister and urges him to be included in Amanda's rescue effort. The scene then switches to showing Antboy visiting Wilhelm's house with Ida. Wilhelm was amazed by Ida's presence at his house, especially after learning that Pelle had deliberately invited Ida to help him save Amanda. Wilhelm didn't want Ida to find out about Pelle's identity as Antboy and reveal it to everyone, which would lead to chaos. But Pelle tries to convince his friend that Ida won't know his secret. The three of them then investigated the videotape of Amanda's abduction and began to analyze it. Wilhelm said that Ida and Amanda's father looked like Lex Luthor in the Superman comics, a person who looks good on the outside, but actually has ambitions to rule the world. Ida, who did not accept that her father was equated with an antagonist, became angry and quarreled with Wilhelm. But Antboy manages to break them up and asks Ida if she suspects someone might have kidnapped Amanda. Ida said that it was very likely that Amanda's kidnapper hated her father and wanted to control the b0y Farms company and its entire factory. b0y Farms is a biochemical company that focuses on developing and producing medicines and vaccines. Ida did not know exactly about this because her father only said that he and his company were conducting research to make medicines that could cure rare diseases for which there is no cure yet. Antboy then seemed to be sniffing something. Turns out he smelled Amanda's scent attached to Amanda's necklace brought by Ida. The three of them finally agreed to search by relying on Antboy's sharp smell, who tried to find the location of Amanda's whereabouts by sniffing her scent. After searching for some time, they finally arrived at the house belonging to an old woman named Mrs. b0y. Antboy said that this is where he was first bitten and got superpowers. Wilhelm said that this house was empty after the owner died. Wilhelm added that Mrs. b0y's body was in a decomposed state and was thought to have been dead for 2 weeks before being found by the police. Antboy then ventured into the house through the door that led to the basement. He enters a room that looks like a research lab, complete with a microscope, computer, and items commonly used to support research. After walking through the room, he finally found Amanda confined in a glass box. However, not long after, Flea came, who immediately intimidated Antboy until he entered the glass box next to Amanda and locked it. Flea then pressed a button for Antboy to hear. Antboy asks Flea to free Amanda, but Flea says he intends to take revenge on Amanda's father for ruining his life. Flea revealed that he had worked at Exo Farms as a biochemist. His research involved the ant species Formica aquilonia, which he said has a rare healing substance that can treat diseases in humans. After doing research for some time, Flea finally created a serum that was claimed to cure disease. He performs her mother's first attempt, Mrs. geeky, who has a tumor. After he injected the serum, the tumor on his mother's body began to shrink and her health condition recovered. However, Mr. Sommerstead suddenly stopped research on the grounds of saving the company's budget. Eventually, Mrs. geeky died and Flea was fired from the company for trying to threaten the director of Exo Farms. From then on, Flea plotted revenge on Mr. Sommerstead and Exo Farms. Secretly, he continued his research using a new species, the blood-sucking head louse. He developed a serum that makes him have super strength and can fly. His strength will increase after drinking blood. Flea reveals that Pelle got his superpowers from the last genetically modified ant he had developed to create a healing serum for his mother. Flea then tries to destroy Antboy's self-confidence by revealing the fact that Amanda only likes Antboy and has never noticed Pelle Noman around her. He then mentions that Wilhelm might just want to be friends with Pelle because he has superpowers. Flea then emphasizes that Pelle is a nobody, not a superhero or anything. Pelle was like a cowardly little ant that would be easily crushed by him. Pelle, who heard all of Flea's words, looked thoughtful and looked down sadly because it was true. So far, people only know about Antboy when there is a Pelle Noman who risked his life to save them all. Pelle also lost his confidence and again considered himself nothing, just a little ant who might mean nothing to anyone. Wilhelm and Ida called the police and in no time Flea was surrounded. However, Flea managed to escape by jumping flying, leaving Antboy still pensive in the glass case. After that incident, Pelle decided to stop being Antboy because he had failed to save Amanda. But Wilhelm told Pelle not to give up because Flea was still roaming free and might commit another crime. Pelle, who was annoyed at Wilhelm's words, then gave him an Antboy mask and told him to become Antboy if he wanted to fight Flea and save the world. Wilhelm took Antboy's mask and immediately left Pelle. The next day, as Wilhelm had feared, Flea reappeared and attacked their school. Wilhelm then approached Pelle and asked him to turn into Antboy and defeat Flea. But Pelle refuses because he is fed up with being a superhero and leaves this matter to the police. Unlike Pelle, Wilhelm could not allow Flea's actions to destroy the school and injure the students. Wilhelm then put on the Antboy mask and tried to fight Flea with bug spray. However, Wilhelm, who had no superpowers, could easily be caught by Flea and intimidated by him. Pelle, who knew this, immediately rushed to save his best friend by wearing a replica of the Antboy costume that was prepared for the school musical. But again, Flea can easily take down Antboy, who is not in top condition because he hasn't been eating sweets lately. Flea then kidnaps Wilhelm and takes him to the forest. Antboy rushes after him on a bicycle. Arriving in the forest, Antboy finds Wilhelm tied to a tree trunk. He immediately freed his friend just as Flea came to confront him. Antboy and Wilhelm immediately ran for safety. They then come up with a plan to defeat Flea. Pelle manages to outwit Flea by taking off Antboy's costume and mask and placing them on the ground. When Pelle came face to face with Flea, Wilhelm sneaked up behind him and opened the valve of the blood tank to prevent Flea from getting the blood supply to increase his strength. Flea tried to intimidate Pelle by cornering him mentally. But Pelle now feels more confident because he has a true friend who always supports and helps him. Pelle then replies that Flea is just a tick who is always alone and has no friends to help him. Pelle then managed to defeat Flea, and finally Flea, whose real name is Dr. geeky, was arrested by the police and sentenced to prison for the kidnapping case of Amanda and the school attack. After successfully defeating Flea, Pelle, who is back in the Antboy costume, meets Amanda. Amanda then thanked Antboy for saving her and tried to kiss him, but Antboy stepped back and said that he wanted to meet Ida. Amanda, who looks annoyed that Antboy rejected her, then calls Ida to her room and leaves the two of them. Antboy thanks Ida for helping him, but Ida instead praised Pelle Noman, implying that she already knew Antboy's true identity. Ida assured Pelle that she would keep it a secret and asked him to befriend her. Pelle was happy to accept Ida as his friend. The film ends by showing Pelle and Wilhelm discussing new costumes and the possibility of a new superhero.